Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight on politics and through college. So my guest today is Jack Ciattarelli, and he's the Assemblyman for the state of New Jersey for District 16, right?
Correct.
All right, then welcome to the show, Jack.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Anthony.
no problem. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where did you go to college?
Seton Hall University. I received my Bachelor's of Science from Seton Hall, majored in accounting, and then I was very, very fortunate because upon graduating they offered me a fellowship. So I did my master's work there as well. So I have an MBA from Seton Hall too.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, so let's go back in time. I know there's a lot of time, and colleges have changed over the years. But how did you get started in picking Seton Hall? What was the process? When did you start in high school? Was it freshman year? Was it senior year? When did you start thinking about it?
I'm laughing to myself because I'm going through the process for the second time in less than 2 years with my son. We have 4 children, and the process is so different today than it was when I was contemplating college. All I knew is that I was going to be majoring in accounting. So all I looked for were colleges that had great reputations for their accounting department. So I applied to Scranton, I applied to Rider University, Seton Hall University, and Villanova University.
Wow.
Those schools in particular in this area all had a great reputation for their accounting program and their graduates passing the CPA exam. That was the only criteria. Today we're looking at rec centers, pools, cafeterias, dormitories. I didn't look at any of those things. But I think we go about it much better today.
Yeah. So you didn't visit any of the schools? There wasn't a time frame? You just went to senior year and that was it?
That was it. I got put on waiting list at Villanova. I was accepted to Rider. I was accepted to Scranton. I was accepted to Seton Hall. And we were very, very close with the pastor at St. Anne's Church in Raritan, who was a graduate of Seton Hall. And he said, let's go see Seton Hall. And when I got there, I fell in love with the place.
Wow.
So it worked out great for me.
Yeah, fantastic. So you get to college, you're studying to become a CPA, and when did you start thinking about what you're going to do after school?
Well, Seton Hall was a great program because the top accounting students in their senior year received the privilege of interning with what was then the Big 8. I think today it's the Big 6, the biggest accounting firms in the metropolitan area. And I really like that idea. It's kind of like almost a co-op. So I think education is invaluable when not only are you learning what's in the textbook, but you're learning what's going on in the field. So I interned and was contemplating going into Big 8 accounting. But then as I moved through my senior year, I learned about the MBA program at Seton Hall and about the fellowships that were available. And I applied and was fortunate enough to be selected. So I decided to stay there as a full-time graduate student and get my MBA. You either worked as a research assistant or a teaching assistant or an administrative assistant, got your education for free, and again, completed your master's degree in less than 2 years' time.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
So now you graduated from college, you go to a Big 8 firm?
Well, it's interesting because now that I have the MBA, I decided to give corporate finance a try as opposed to public accounting. And so I went and worked for Dun & Bradstreet, Murray Hill, in Murray Hill, and worked for one of their divisions in corporate finance. And then after 2 years of that, I went and worked for corporate finance for a smaller firm. Back then it was called Research Cottrell, an environmental services firm. It was at that point I realized I wasn't enjoying corporate finance as much as I thought I would. And then I went back into public accounting and practiced as a CPA for a couple of years. But then after 2 years of that, left and did another major career change.
Interesting. So now, how do you become Assemblyman of the state of New Jersey for the 16th District, and what is the 16th District?
Okay, well let's start off with the second part. The 16th District is one of 40 legislative districts in New Jersey. Each one has approximately 220,000 people in it. And so when you aggregate all 40 of those districts, we add up to our 8.8 million people in the state of New Jersey. The 16th Legislative District has 5 Hunterdon County towns: Stockton, Delaware, Flemington, Raritan, and Reddington; 7 Somerset County towns: Branchburg, Somerville, Manville, Millstone, Rocky Hill, Hillsborough, and Montgomery, your hometown.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Mercer County, Princeton, and in Middlesex County, South Brunswick. So those are the 14 towns that constitute the 16th Legislative District. How did I get into politics? When I came home from Seton Hall with my MBA, CPA, the mayor at the time was close friends with my parents. And he saw something in me, and he approached me. I had never contemplated public service, but I've always been a curious sort. And I said, this sounds really, really interesting. And the pitch he made to me was compelling. He said, listen, municipal finance is changing. And it's not like the old days. We need people who have college degrees and master's degrees, and I need a finance chair on our borough council. Will you please think about doing this? And I did. And so it's been a fascinating journey. And I always say people get into politics one of three ways. You're inspired by somebody. My parents' generation were inspired by Kennedy. My generation was inspired a great deal by Ronald Reagan. Younger people today, a great many were inspired by Barack Obama's first campaign. Or you have someone in your family that did it, or somebody sees something in you and they recruit you. That's how I ended up in politics.
Interesting. So now, how long does it take to get to become an assemblyman?
Well, everyone's path is different. I've done it in a way that many others have. I served 2 terms at the municipal level. Then I took 10 years away from politics because my wife and I were having the first of our 4 and I was going into business for myself. But then after 10 years away, I was approached again to run for a county freeholder seat. New Jersey's kind of dubious in one respect. We're the only state in the union that refers to our county commissioners as freeholders. So I was fortunate enough to win that race and serve 2 terms at the county freeholder level. And just as I was about to retire from politics again, redistricting came in New Jersey with new legislative maps, and there was an opening to run for the 16th legislative district, which I did 3.5 years ago. So here I am today.
And how many terms is that for?
Assembly terms are always 2-year terms. So I'm in the midst of campaigning now for my 3rd time around. So I ran over 3 years ago, won, served 2 terms, ran a 1.5 years ago, won a 2nd term. So now I'm in the midst of asking the voters for a 3rd term.
Wow. So now let's go back in time. With students that want to go into college and want to do that as something for their future, is there a path that they could take to go to college for?
I think there is. If you're undecided, I think it's critically important to go start out in a liberal arts program. I think that's very, very important. I think it'll give you many different academic experiences and teach you what it is that you might be most interested in. Certainly, if you know exactly what it is that you want to do from day one, that helps you, I think, narrow the criteria for what college you want to go to. And then take as many of those courses early on as you can and find out for sure.
Right.
I was very, very fortunate in that from the moment in time I took introductory accounting classes in high school, I knew it was what I wanted to do. I find the discipline fascinating. I like the way it trains you to think. And I always liked the idea of ultimately working in an accounting firm and being exposed to a number of different companies, getting inside their operations.
Yeah.
But that would be my advice. If you don't know what you want to do, go to a very, very strong liberal arts college and get as much exposure to as many different courses as possible. If you do know exactly what you want to do, then pick a school that has a fine reputation in that area and co-ops, internships, so that you can get work experience too.
So now, someone that wants to get into politics as a young boy, girl that's in high school, what's the major that they have to get into in college?
Well, quite frankly, there's a lot of people that are interested in politics that therefore they major in political science. There are a great many people that major in political science because they want to go to law school. I would recommend that unless you know that you're going for a postgraduate degree like a master's or law school, do not major in political science. And I think it's more important to get something very, very practical. This way you can always fall back on the education and you're much more employable.
Right.
Getting involved in politics, I think in a very, very early age, it's good to be involved on the periphery. Become part of your local Republican organization or your local Democratic organization. Become a district committee man. or woman. Those are the people by law in every voting district. In Hillsborough, we have 42 different voting districts. Montgomery, I think, has 30 different voting districts. Every one of those voting districts has a committee, a Republican committee man and woman, a Democratic committee man and woman. It's their job to make sure people are registered to vote in the area.
Really?
So that's a great way to get involved and get a taste of it. I usually don't recommend that people get into elected office right out of college. I think what makes you a much better elected official is after you've had the opportunity to ascertain a whole bunch of different life experiences. Because the people that you represent have all different kind of challenges that they're facing. And I think you're in a better position to understand, empathize, and act when you yourself have a number of different experiences upon which to draw.
Gotcha. So these kids that come out of college and they go run for mayor of their small little town or something like that, they're 22, 23 years old, they win. What's the aspect of those kids? What are they looking at for the future?
Listen, a great many who do it that way are very, very effective elected officials. My concern always is, because serving today is a full-time job, no matter what level you're at. And it doesn't pay well, it doesn't pay the bills. And when and if you lose that last election at the age of 28 or 29 after you've been mayor for 8 years, where do you go next? So again, you know, preparing yourself for all those stages of life, I think the more experiences that you had, the better positioned you are. Public service will always be there. Public service will always be there. But the data is also pretty compelling that your primary earning years will be in your latter 30s and 40s and 50s after you've gathered a whole lot of very invaluable experience in your 20s and early 30s.
Really? So now someone that's in college and is looking at it, is there internship programs that they have?
You bet. In politics?
Yeah.
You bet. In fact, in my office, at any point in time, we're always having at least 3 to 5 unpaid internships that are filled with college students. So every year I'll go, there's one particular professor at Rutgers that'll have me speak every year at his political science class, and we invite people to apply. So that is a great way to get exposure by doing these unpaid internships during the school year.
And do you get a lot of applications that come in?
You bet we do. And in my particular office, I mean, we're pretty rigorous. We make you sit down and go through an interview.
Wow.
And that includes a writing test. We're not going to hire just anybody to serve the public. And these need to be folks who have a great work ethic, great mind, and want to contribute to the team. So once they're serving in an unpaid internship, they'll be doing research, they'll be doing constituent services, they'll be writing letters and the like. So we put them to work.
Wow, that's a lot. And they're going through the whole summer like this?
Some of them do work in the summer, an unpaid internship, and because they want the experience and they want to be able to list it on their resume. And I mean that in a very, very positive way. I do think that working in a legislative office is an invaluable experience, especially if you're put to work the way we put our interns to work.
Yeah, sure. So are they active in getting donations and this kind of stuff over the phone? Is that kind of stuff too,
that's
no?
kind of the campaign side of things. And there are some people who volunteer and want to work strictly on the campaign side of things. But the internships that I'm speaking to right now are inside the district office, engaging in non-campaign things, which means research on different bills that I'm working on, legislation I'm working on, constituent services. There's a particular constituent that may call up who's having an issue with one agency or another at the state, and we need to reach out to the state and see if we can help solve the problem. Or there are just a number of different letters over the course of any week that need to be written. And so they engage in that type of endeavor too. So 2 different types of internships. Your question is a great one, because I've been focusing on the type of internship that takes place inside my legislative office.
Yeah.
There are also internships working on the campaign. And since this is an election year, there's those opportunities as well.
And so is there internships in a lot of different variety of things, like lobbyists? Do they have internships? Does the governor have internships? Is there that type of stuff?
It spans the spectrum. There are all different kinds.
Really?
So depending on, there are some people, depending on what your interests are, there are some people that just very, very much liking the campaign part, because their goal in life is to be a campaign manager. And there are people that are paid very, very well to do that. There are some people that enjoy very, very much the constituent services part of it. So that's the kind of internship we have inside my legislative office. And then there are people whose desires are to ultimately be a policy wonk, if you will. So they're the ones that are looking to work in Trenton, for example, in the governor's office, or for a lobbyist, because those are the areas in which there's a great deal of research on policy, on legislation, and the like.
So that's why you're saying a lot of these kids that go to college, not so much just political economics and things, it's more getting to become a lawyer or something added on top of that, because if you're going to do those extra things, you'll have that experience.
You'll have that experience. And listen, there are a lot of people that know they want to work in government. But you don't need a political science degree in order to work in government. And so with my own 4 children, what I would encourage them to do is if they wanted to work in government, I would say great. But unless they know they're going to law school, I would say don't major in political science. Now that doesn't make me right, or it doesn't mean anybody who's majoring in political science wrong.
Right.
But I like the idea of getting a degree that has some practicality to in the private sector if by chance things don't work out for them in the public sector.
Yeah. So now, a lot of these kids, do they have the backing of their parents when they're going to see these schools? I mean, you're working with your kids now. Do you have a lot of they asking you to come with me here, come with me there? What are you doing with your own kids going to college?
Everybody's pathway is different, and I don't think there's any one set formula for success. In our particular family, this is the decision as to where our children go is entirely theirs. My wife and I feel that our job is to make sure they're going about the decision in the right way. So that's the way we've approached the whole thing. And I've been very, very proud of my daughter, who's now completing her sophomore year at West Virginia, and my son, who decided just last week to attend the University of Minnesota. We're very proud of the way in which they went about the process.
Great.
What do I want to do? How do I use that to determine what the criteria should be? And then what schools fit my criteria? They apply to schools. If they got accepted, then we went and visited those schools. That process has now worked for the Ciattarellis twice over.
Yeah, that's
But
great.
the decision, I think, needs to be ultimately theirs. They need to be happy with their decision.
And when do you start the process? Because a lot of parents out there, they don't know when to start the process. Is it when they're a freshman, a sophomore, a junior? When did you start with your kids?
I think there's 2 different aspects to the process. The first is, what do you want to do in life? So what my wife and I have done is looked at our children's strengths and then try to steer them in directions where they can achieve success because the job they have leverages those strengths.
Yeah.
It builds on those strengths. And so my daughter has always been a very, very social creature. And so she ended up leaning toward broadcast news. West Virginia has a fantastic broadcast news program.
Great.
Our son, Jake, is very, very analytical. And so we steered him in a couple of directions that kind of build off of those strengths. And he's going to be majoring in economics. So again, the first part of the process, what are your strengths?
Yeah.
And what type of jobs kind of fit those strengths? Then around sophomore year, we start saying, okay, go and do some research. Knowing that that's what you want to do in life, what schools have programs, and then what are the other things you're looking for?
Yeah.
And so in both cases with my 2 oldest children, they wanted schools with big-time football and basketball programs because they liked the school spirit.
Right.
So first and foremost, does the school have a program that caters to what my career desires are? Then, okay, does it also have these other things that will make college life for me much more fun?
Yeah. So now picking the school, how did you end up picking schools? I mean, University of Minnesota is a little far, and from New Jersey, and as well as West Virginia.
I love your question because in the case of our son, the criteria was very, very interesting. He wanted a very, very cold climate because he loves winter. Second thing he wanted was a school with a big football and basketball program. And then third, but really first, he wanted a school that was known for a top 25 school with its economics department. So that made his, by narrowing the criteria in that way, it made his selection process very, very easy. And of all the schools that he applied to, and we're proud to say that he got into a number of fantastic schools, University of Minnesota fit the criteria best. We just went out there 2 weeks ago and had a college visit, and my wife and I are behind him 100%. It was a great visit.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy visiting the school? And
Oh, very much.
What does that whole process go through? Is it just a touring of the school, and do you get a little bit more information from the school when you're there?
And listen, I know of parents that hire consultants to help their children with the whole application process. My wife and I consciously decided not to do that. That is not to suggest that those that do are wrong.
Right.
We thought it would be an invaluable experience as our children now enter this adulthood.
Yeah.
In this phase of their life, and very soon they'll be away at college and making decisions entirely on their own. Let's see how they do managing this entire process. So ours did great in deciding what schools fit their criteria, did the whole application process on their own, and then once accepted, they scheduled the campus visits, let us know, and of course we accompanied them. So that's how we went through the whole process.
Yeah, that's
and it's worked for us.
Yeah, fantastic. So now, what are you looking at in the future of politics? Do you see anything coming up in the future of what these kids might be looking at when they're starting to get out of school?
Well, first of all, I think public service is a wonderful, wonderful experience, as is, for example, serving in the military, which I have some regrets in life that I never served in the military. I think that, too, would be a phenomenal experience, a great learning experience, and an honor to serve our country in that way. So, but I think even if someone, the first question I always ask when I speak to college students today is, who wants to hold elected office? And for those who raise their hand, I ask them why. For those that don't raise their hand, what I suggest is they find a way, some way, somehow to get involved. Because I think it's just an invaluable experience. And it introduces you to so many people. And it will be a very, very rewarding personal experience and potentially professional experience to just engage in the public sphere some way, somehow, even if they decide not to hold elected office. If they do decide early on that they want to hold elective office, I put them through a pretty rigorous oral exam. I want to know their reasons why.
Yeah.
And then I'll share with them whether or not they're on the right track.
Yeah, that's great. And so, where's the future of politics? What are we looking at?
The challenges that we're up against are greater today than at any other point in time in our history, aside from those times when we've been engaged in war. And certainly there are some challenges we still meet in the Middle East in terms of foreign nations and foreign peoples that are hostile to us and threaten us. But the challenges are extraordinary. And I see that as an unbelievable opportunity. Kennedy once said, whatever man has created, man can solve. So the question then becomes, how are we going to solve it? And it's each generation's responsibility to try and solve it. Certainly the great issues of our day are healthcare, secure retirement, addressing poverty, everyone having an equal opportunity to climb the ladder, right? Upward mobility is an American ideal, and it's one that we need to ensure is available to everyone. So how do we address those challenges today? I find it fascinating. And while some of us may shrink from the magnitude of those challenges, we need people that want to embrace that challenge and not be afraid to fail.
So a lot of times, kids in college, they should be looking at that as the future of what they should be researching and things like that, if that's something that they want to get into. Is
You
that
bet. And my feeling is if you're not part of the solution, you may in fact be part of the problem. There's a very pervasive despondency and cynicism at work today in way too many people. And we need to believe that we can solve these problems. And so, when I think of the next 100 years, when you think about things like world hunger and a shortage of fresh drinking water and the potential for poverty, not just in our own nation, but around the world, these are issues that we need to address. And each generation brings with it, I think, a new energy. And an open-mindedness to how to solve these things.
I agree.
So get involved.
Yeah, so as soon as they graduate, you're ready to rock and roll, right?
Ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. So We're basically coming to the end of our show. And usually what I ask my guests is, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there that have sons and daughters, want to go to college, want to get into politics? What advice do you want to give them to do that?
You know, the term we hear today an awful lot is helicopter parents. And I think if there are, in fact, helicopter parents, it's for the right reason. We love our children, and we want to see them do well. And so what we may inadvertently be doing is not just helping them with their decision-making process, but actually making decisions for them. My wife and I feel very, very strongly, and the advice I would give to people is, teach our children how to arrive at a decision. Teach them what the proper decision-making process is, but in the end, let them make these decisions. Certainly, if we feel very strongly they're making a bad decision, it's time to sit down and have a talk. But I think the earlier that we can teach our children how to be personally responsible and self-reliant in making decisions, provided we're going about the decisions the right way, that's an invaluable learning experience. That's a lifelong skill. I think all of us who have gone to college realize that once we are there in September, there are decisions that we're making every single day that we have to make on our own. That is not to say that you don't get the phone call from time to time, hey mom, hey dad, I was thinking about this, and I think that's great that they feel comfortable enough, and our children should, to call their parents, their guardians, and say, hey, what do you think? Asking for advice is an important characteristic too. But the advice I would give is, teach us how to make decisions, but don't make those decisions for us.
Interesting. Well, great. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Anthony. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem. And you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.